Let's go.
We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully your day is going well. It is Thursday, and it's so often the case. We have a guest, a very popular guest, frequent guest, and that is Old Soul. She's coming to us from Las Vegas. I'm in Georgia. I'm headed back to Minnesota. As you listen to this podcast, I'm going back to Minnesota. So this will be the last podcast out of Georgia. But I'm glad we got a chance to connect up today and talk a bit.
Yeah, it's cool. I was asking you before, how was your trip to Georgia? You seem to like it there a lot. As much like flack as we hear about Georgia, um, there are some good people out there.
Well, what's interesting about Georgia, I was talking to somebody about it today, and I'm always reminded of the Trump saying, "Oh my God, what happens if people become the minority?" And I said, "What about it? I'm in Savannah. I couldn't love these people more than anything. They are nicest people in the world. And you know what the percentage of white people in Savannah is? 36%.
I was gonna say it's pretty low, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty low. And if this is what happens when white people become the minority, I'm on it. I'm with it. Let's do it. Because
Do
these
you see
people are
Georgia as, do you see it as purple in Georgia?
I don't know if we see it as purple, but this area is pretty blue. I think Atlanta's pretty blue. I would
Yeah,
say it's purple. I mean, you think about it, we got two Democratic senators from Georgia. I mean, there are
yeah.
pockets of places that are just fucking crazily, like Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. I don't know what's going on there, but I don't need to go there.
Isn't she in Rome, Georgia, right?
I think so, yeah. Just kind of north of Atlanta, but it's still rural. Um, and they'll probably reelect her in 24 here.
I think they will. I've seen her competition. I think he's a military veteran. I don't know the branch of the military. But I seen him like out there talking to a lot of the farmers and just kind of like those salt of the earth type of people.
Right.
And they seemed like open to someone other than her. But I think he would be a good suit there, especially since he owns a farm there and he works his own land. And he's a black guy too. So I don't even know if they would even consider that. Maybe a handful of people, but I don't know if there's too many that would pick him.
Well, 2 years ago, she was running against a pretty formidable Democrat. I think he was a veteran. He was an African American gentleman, very sharp, very articulate. I thought, well, this is a good chance. She's an idiot. He's a great prospect. Probably, hopefully, he'll win. And of course, he
Yeah.
didn't. So I'm not making any bets on Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. They may be a lost cause.
Yeah, I think he would be a good fit, but and then I don't know enough about Georgia. I know just enough from reading Democracy Docket of how they make those maps of those districts. So they make it in a way to where she's almost like guaranteed to win where
Yeah.
she's at. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, some of these are so gerrymandered, not only in Georgia, but in other parts of the country. They're so gerrymandered that oftentimes there's no opposition. Democrats don't even bother. I know that happens in Tennessee. They don't even try because there's no way they're going to win. It's all fixed, as Donald Trump would say.
Yeah, but I was listening to someone talk about that. If you have like Mike Johnson, you know,
Yeah.
he was only in Congress because nobody ran against him. He had to just fill out paper, pay his filing fees, and he was in. So they were saying even if you don't want anybody to run unopposed, but even if you know you're going to lose, at least run. That way you can put pressure on them to make promises and deliver on their promises. And it kind of sounded good, but I don't think that's realistic because you run against somebody and you can make all of these promises the way that the Republican Party is. It doesn't mean that they have to deliver on any of it.
Well, in
You know what
order
I mean?
to in order to run against somebody, you got to come up with a lot of money. You got to come up with support. You got a lot of time and effort. You expose yourself where half the area is going to hate you. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of positives in getting into a race if you know you're going to lose. So I get why people don't do it. It would be nice if they're all opposed, but because of the way the system being gamed the way it is, people just don't want to bother. And that's a downfall, a failing of our democratic system.
Yeah. I think the worst thing to see is an uncontested race where they're just in there just because they had enough money to buy, basically is buying a seat.
Right,
And
right,
then if you do run against someone, sometimes it's not about the policies or what they want to do. It's about who has the deeper pockets. So
right.
I don't know.
Well, when we first connected up here today, I asked you how you were doing, and you seemed different than you have the last couple of times. You weren't tired. You were um, uh, in an up tempo mood. You may or may not had an adult beverage or two, not too many, but just enough to take the edge off. And I was, I'm coming off kind of a weird. I don't get sick too often, but I had a little stomach issue because of some place we went to eat. So I'm a little down this time, and you're the one that's fired up. So this will be interesting to see how this plays out. But the reason I bring that up is because the reason you were in this state because you were celebrating. And what you were celebrating was Juneteenth, and Wednesday was that holiday. And I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of people don't really quite understand what Juneteenth is about. And besides whatever buffet spread you dealt with, why don't you tell us a little bit about Juneteenth and what that really means to not only people of color, but the entire country?
Yeah, I think that the way I try to explain it to people who just don't understand it or they don't get it or they don't know why it was a holiday, I'll just say, hey, when was your Independence Day? This was
Right.
our Independence Day. And then that's how I explain it, because even though you look at the American Independence Day, we all weren't free by that day. A lot of us didn't even know that we were free by that day. So Juneteenth, that's just a celebration of when we knew that we were free, and we still had a lot of work to go, but it was definitely something to be celebrated.
Well, and
But it is pretty sad because
yeah.
there was a lot of people that lost their lives trying to get there. So it is something to be celebrated, and we celebrate it all the time.
Well, tell me if I'm
But
wrong about this. You had the Emancipation Proclamation, the slaves were freed, but we didn't have the internet back then. So it took a while to get the information out. And it was like 2 years later, the information got to Texas and that general area, and they were finally notified that they were free.
yeah.
Um, that's what Juneteenth is about. And it's weird because it's a day you need to acknowledge,
Hmm.
but but it also illustrates a final what's the word I'm looking, disrespect paid to people of color by delaying them to get the information. And you can't help but think that that delay and that slowdown wasn't intentional to a certain extent.
It was definitely intentional. They didn't, I think, like, there's a lot of in their minds of, well, who's gonna work my land? Who's gonna make this money for me? Like, if I give away, they didn't look at us as people, but if I give away this property, how am I gonna earn my money? Do you expect for me to get out there and do my own crops and pick my own vegetables and cook my own food? Do you expect for me to do that? Like, I'm not, like, what are we supposed to do? So there was a delay there, and they were banking on Black people being ignorant and not understanding. And a lot of them didn't think if we were free that we would want to leave, because staying with them and being abused, it was still like food and a house. They didn't think that we would want to be free. But when we got the opportunity to be free, we were like, bet.
You say, fuck it, we're out of here. No,
See you later.
but that had to be a tough thing for Black folks after being enslaved for all those years. Some of those people have been enslaved since birth, and they come to you and they say, "Hey, you're free now." You don't even know what the fuck that means because you've never been free. You have no
Mhm.
clue as what you're going to do. I mean, the older folks who probably had hopes and dreams had imagined this at some point, but this is a tough situation to tell people of color, okay, you're free now, go off and live your life. And that's a lot to ask. I mean, hell, when you send a kid to college and he gets done with 4 years, say, okay, you're an adult, go live your life. They
Yeah.
couldn't be more confused. They don't know what the fuck to do. And the same would be said for that. So it was an absolutely incredible moment in history. It was something that we needed. And I think too often, um, white people in this country don't know anything about it. That's why a couple of years ago when it happened, I said, I don't know shit about this. I need to learn about it. So I did read up on it. And I thought, well, here's old soul. She's smart, she's articulate, and she happens to be black. So
Yeah.
I wanted her to explain this shit to us.
I think that some people think like when you hear people like Byron Donalds and Tim Scott, some of the racist stuff that they say, it's like they know better, but they try to tell themselves something different.
Yeah.
They don't understand. I think that they think that you have to struggle in order to get somewhere. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just kind of like you have to be hungry. You have to work 2 or 3 jobs. Like you have to struggle in order to be elevated and be something. But the way that we are now and the same way that our people were back then, it's just like we don't want the next generation to go through what we have to go through. So even though it's scary to leave and to get out there by themselves, you still got the KKK running around, you still got lynching, you still got segregation. It was just like so much we have to fight against, but it's like I have to keep pushing so that the people behind me, they don't have to go through all of this. And I think sometimes that's what they don't get, and that's what they don't understand. They really do feel like if you're a Black person in America, if you haven't like struggled, then you shouldn't be elevated anywhere. And it's
Right.
crazy because I get that with my daughter like a lot. And even she said a couple of times, like the girl that's here now, she's like, look what she went through at like 23. I think about what you went through when you were at 23. Look at the wild child, like what she went through, like she was 17. She was like, sometimes she gets almost like a survival guilt because she didn't have to go through all of that. And it's just like, you can't minimize like your education, your degree, and where you're at now because you didn't have to like struggle and backbending labor in order to get there. You're the one who went to school. You're the one who studied. You're the one who earned everything that you accomplished. Don't diminish it just because, you didn't have to like go through the mud in order to get there. And I think that Tim Scott, Byron Donalds, those type of people, they try to put that on us. Like you
Right.
have to, we're not going to give you any handouts because you don't deserve a handout. We're not going to do this and that for you because you don't deserve it. So you have to basically go against like the odds, and then you have to make it, and then you'll earn respect. And it's not like that. We push hard so that the people behind us don't have to.
Right.
And I think that mindset comes from my ancestors and why they pushed hard and why we didn't have to go through stuff that they have to go through, even though, the Republican Party would like for us to go back to that, but that's not going to happen.
When I was in business, and some people thought I was joking about this, but I was not. And other people got angry about it. Oh, you're just lazy. But I had a motto in business was make as much money as you can with the least amount of effort. And people really kicked back at me. You want to just make money for doing nothing or not much of anything? Yeah. I mean, if you can use your mind, you don't have to go break your back to make money. And this is where Joe Biden has kind of let the genie out of the bottle. For decades and decades, the Republicans have told the middle class, you can't have it easy. Nothing comes easy.
Yep.
You got to
Yep.
toil. You got to go through tribulations. You got to fight for what you want. And then you maybe deserve something. But what did Joe Biden do? He decided to, instead of pouring money into the wealthy, which hasn't worked in 45 years, he put money back into the middle class and the people under the middle class that were the poor folks. And guess what? It fucking worked. It was
Yeah.
good for the economy and good for the people. The
Yeah.
Republicans have known this all along. They just don't want you to get the money. They don't want a lot of the money. They want all the money. And so
Yeah.
now what Joe Biden did, it exposed what's really true, and hopefully that'll make some significant changes in government in the coming decades.
Yeah, I think that if you listen to the people who are telling you that, it won't make sense.
No,
Because if you listen to Jeff Bezos telling you that, well, we don't need to pay you a living wage because if you want to make it, you'll do whatever you have to do to make it. You'll work 2, 3 jobs to make it. And then you look at Jeff Bezos and you say, okay, are you on the floor at Amazon packing boxes?
yeah,
Are you at Amazon cleaning toilets? You say the same thing with Elon Musk. When was the last time you was at Tesla on the assembly line making cars? When were you doing all of this stuff that you're trying to make us do? So it's okay for you to work smarter and not harder. But when it comes to us, we have to. So that's almost them saying, well, you're just low class, so you don't deserve any kind of breaks, whether you earn it or not. And I think that's what they were trying to tell us then, and we didn't listen. And that's what they're trying to tell us now, and we still not listening. They do get mad sometimes at some of the younger people who um, they have whole careers based off of social media or based off of YouTube or making soap that they sell. Just like they are feeling like I don't have to go to some corporation and do a 9 to 5 and make money. I can figure out my own way. And I
right.
think they find a problem with Gen Z when it comes to that, because it's like, okay, well, who's going to work in my factory? Who's going to clean my house? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? They take offense to it. And then what they try to do is they try to like beat you down to a point to where you feel like that's your lot in life and that's what you're supposed to do. And I
Well,
can get it when it comes from the people at the top, like, okay, yeah, I see why they're saying that. But when it comes to just like regular blue collar everyday people, I don't understand why they feel like that. Like, why do they feel like a union is bad? Why do they feel? I saw what's his name, Tim Scott, on the Senate floor, and he was talking about junk fees because Biden really doesn't like that. He doesn't want you to have to pay a $45 overdraft fee when you only went over your account by $5 or whatever, or
right.
you can't charge it but once a month, that type of stuff. Like, he's limiting that. And he had the audacity to sit there and say, the American people, they don't think junk fees are a bad thing. I don't know. And he just went on this rant about Biden and the junk fees. And I'm sitting there like, what Republican who is struggling and has overdraft fees in their account, which they do, is listening to him and saying, "Oh, yep, that's a good point. That's true."
Well, you make a
But
good you make a good point. Take for example Steve Jobs.
mhm,
You could hardly find a more successful businessman in the history of this country.
yeah,
Um, but what did Steve Jobs do? He had a marketing ability. He knew how to kind of rile up people's interest. He knew how to do that, but he didn't invent the computer. He was
no,
lucky enough to have a buddy, a good friend that he talked shit about that could invent the computer. And then he parlayed that into something. He wasn't doing it. He wasn't working hard ever. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't work hard. There are people whose aptitude says, we're going to go work in the fields or we're going to work in a steel mill. I'm not begrudging people that. But when you
yeah,
tell everybody you're not working hard enough, so you don't deserve it, that's ridiculous, because nobody ever says anything about giving tax breaks to rich people about not working hard. They
right,
never complain about money going to the Defense Department, even though we have 10 times as much in the coffers there as any other country behind us. They never
mhm,
question that. But when it comes back to the middle class, then they question it. They say, we can't afford that. And I say that's bullshit. We can afford it, especially if it benefits this economy. And we've
yeah.
proven that it does.
And you know what their new talking point, which I think is ridiculous, is not only are we not working hard enough, but we're not working long enough. So why are you trying to retire at 65? You need to retire at 70, 75, because you're not working hard enough, long enough. And
Right.
it's just, to me, it's just like the disdain that they have for just people is insane to me. And I do think a lot of people, some of them forget, but a lot of them have never been in our shoes, so they can't relate and they don't understand. That's how I think we need a representative body, like, of the people. We don't need to elect some trust fund kid who's never had to struggle or doesn't know what it's like to, float a check or try to buy groceries at the dollar store because you can't afford Walmart. I think we need to just like elect regular people that's from us to represent us instead of people like Ted Cruz. And Donald Trump has no idea what it's like to be a regular person, like
No.
no idea.
Yeah,
And I think we need to get rid of those people.
Tell me when Donald Trump ever worked hard. He never did. He's been handed money all of his life. But the thing about it is, for these wealthy people, they don't understand what's in front of them. Technology has changed everything. It used to be you had to walk down to a store and buy a record album for $12 or $15, and that's how they made their money. But then Napster came along and online stuff came along, and that cut out a whole chunk of people. So now people, I was just watching on TikTok, and this I think there's this guy, his name is David Smalley, and David Smalley is a comedian, and he has a young daughter, and they kind of interplay on these things, and it's hugely popular. I think he has 1.7 million followers, and it's very funny, and it's very very fun to watch. I enjoy it, and it turns out he watches my stuff too because he comments on it every day. So that's impressive. But anyway, this young daughter of his, very cute little girl, very funny. She's maybe 20 years old, and so she started her own TikTok, and it's just as popular. And it came out, she wasn't holding it back. It came out that she was gay, and she had her partner on the TikTok. And now, of course, the father was getting all kinds of comments saying, "Oh, I bet you're not proud of her now." And
Really?
yeah, he was getting hit pretty hard because she had the audacity to say she was gay. But so this guy who's a comedian, I guess he does pretty well. He's not a singer, but he wrote a song and he played it on guitar on TikTok. That's the only place it was, on TikTok. And the song talks about all the things she is to him and all that. Very touching. And the refrain for the chorus is, "I'm never not proud of you." So he was saying he was proud of her. That fucking thing went viral. And the amazing thing is right now on iTunes, on the country charts, that's number 20. They needed no record label. They needed no middleman in a suit. It just got there based on merit and talent and exposing it himself. And that's the thing. That's where the wealthy people in this country are missing, and they don't understand. When people say, "Well, I'm just going to start my own business," they think, "Oh, that's hard. You got to get brick and mortar." Not anymore. All you have to do is start a TikTok and get popular. You can literally turn TikTok and a podcast into a business. And so these people don't know what to do with that. And beyond that, they've got a shortage of employees, but at the same time, they're saying, keep the immigrants out. They should want the immigrants in to cover all these open spots that can't be filled.
Name an American who was going to, and I watched a video on this where they were picking watermelons in Florida for like 75 cents a watermelon out in the heat, in humidity. And it's not like a watermelon is at eye level. Like you're bent over, digging in the ground, picking watermelons for 75 cents a watermelon. And you have to make a living off of that with no sick time, no overtime pay, no insurance, nothing. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, name some Americans that can do that. And it was these Americans, they were like screaming that the immigrants are taking our jobs. And they went out there, and like the guy who owned that farm was like, I would be lucky if an American lasts like a whole day. They don't. They last a few hours and then they leave, that's it. And I think that people don't understand that. I don't know how they don't understand it, but I think they do understand it. They're just telling themselves that they don't, because until Trump came on the scene and he started spouting this nonsense, it wasn't like an issue the way that it is now. It would be like during the presidential elections, you hear Fox News talk about the caravans and the this and the that. But then after the election, it's like, all right, cool. It's just the way they demonize and inhumanize these people is mind-boggling to me.
I'll
and
be,
then
hon-
to call themselves a Christian at the same time.
yeah, I'll be honest with you. My wife told me, go take that watermelon, cut it up and eat it. I would complain about that. That's too much fucking work. You're not going to get a 64-year-old white guy to be bending
Mhm.
over and picking up watermelons. Maybe I might do it for a day when I was in my 20s just to get enough for beer money, but I'm not going to do it every day. And
Yeah.
that's not only about people making money and employees, but this affects the economy. Like I've told people before, you can keep the immigrants out, but if you got nobody to pick your shit, clean your shit, move your shit, you're out of business. And that
Yeah.
should be enough encouragement for you to bend a little bit in some of the things you're thinking.
Yeah. Even with the hotel millionaires, like when you think about the Hiltons and all of these other people, especially because I'm here in Vegas, so I know a lot of the people who clean the rooms, scrub your toilets, keep the floors of the casinos clean, those are all immigrants, most of them.
Right.
So it's just kind of like, who do you expect to clean up after you when you want to go and party and relax and have a good time and don't have to worry about all of that?
Right.
It's
Right.
just like the appreciation is not there, but we do have a lot of thankless jobs. But it's at the same time, it's just they don't look at them as like human beings. They don't look at them as like moms and dads and families. I don't know why they demonize them so much, knowing that we depend on them. But the people at the top know that. It's them fools at the bottom who just screaming and chanting whatever they tell them to say. I guess they don't think for themselves any longer. It's just like they really don't know that. I'm guessing they don't know that, which
No,
is
I don't think they do.
insane to me. But they don't understand if you just suck the middle class dry. We don't have money to go on vacations. We don't have money to splurge a little bit. Then how are your businesses going to stay working when people don't have money to buy your product? What are you going to do at that point? And so they're so greedy, they don't even see that part of it. Like at least give them something so that they can come over here and spend it. But if we don't have anything, like look at the Great Depression, people weren't buying anything. Businesses were drying up because people just didn't have the money. And I don't get that part. And I guess it's not for me to get because that makes no sense.
I've said when it comes to the wealthy people or corporations, kind of taking off of what you said, once you've taken all our money, who are you going to grift then? And if there's
Right.
nobody to grift, you're out of business. So you're cutting your nose off to spite your face. Now, one thing
Yeah.
we have to do, every week when we talk to you, for those that don't know, Old Soul does a lot of charitable work, and she helps a lot of people. And she's far better than I am. I'm maybe not as charitable as she is, but one of the things she does is when there are women who are in states where there is uh, abortion is illegal and women need that kind of attention, they have to go to a state where it is legal. And oftentimes they'll come to Nevada, and oftentimes Old Soul will allow them to come in her home. Now, typically, I think most people who do what Old Soul does says, there's a room, here's some food, I'll do what I can for you. Old Soul becomes a surrogate mother, taking them to the doctors, driving out of town. She goes the extra mile. And every time we talk to you, you have a different story. We've had the wild child. We've had um, the woman, I think from Texas, whose dad's crazy and her mom's overly religious. But this recent one you had was particularly disturbing for a lot of folks because she was a woman that was trying to keep a low profile as to where she is because she was abused, physically and seriously abused. You told me just as we were coming on that she's still with you now, and maybe you can give us an update of what's going on there.
She's getting better. The other women who work in our organization, like they're not like me, like they might have a job outside of the home and stuff. And they do assist them with like Ubers and like the organization assist them with Ubers, get into their appointments and that type of stuff.
Right.
So they really do just need a room. For me, I'm like, I work from home. I got like a lot of old people in my family that's not doing anything, that's more than happy to pitch in. So instead of like paying for Uber, paying for food and stuff, those resources can go to somebody else because I don't need them. So I do kind of like do a little bit more for them. And plus, like, I'm like one of those people, I cry at like dog food commercials where it's like, I can't help it. I can't ignore these people. But she is doing better. She was like really like depressed. Like you could see her going through these little like stages. And then she just got like really depressed. And she was like in the room, just like sleeping all the time. We're watching the baby doing what we have to. And then my family was like, hey, so are you going to let her just like sleep all the time? Like, what's going to happen here? Are you going to just let her sleep and raise the baby until he's 18? What are you going to do? So I'm like, I don't know, because I don't want to push her and she's not ready. And then I was thinking, I don't know if you read Maya Angelou's book, Why the Caged Bird Sings, or I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Her mother used to have to like take her son and put him in a bed with her. Like that's just what she had to do in order for them to like bond. And I was like, well, maybe I could do that. So that's what I started doing. I got up in the morning, I get him up because he's like a little alarm clock. Get him up, get breakfast, get his face washed and everything. And I would just like go in a room. I would put him in a bed with her, and then I would have like the little TV tray. And then I would wake her up and be like, hey, it's breakfast time. The baby needs to eat. And then I would just like leave. And then I would come do my job, go back in there, get the dishes, get him, give her a break, do the same thing for lunch. Then it comes late, I would either like let her give him dinner, or I would like give him dinner, run the bath water, and wake her up and be like, hey, he needs a bath so he can go to bed. So I was just kind of like easing her into it, but pushing her at the same time. And then I like got up the other day and she's like, hey, do you want breakfast? I'm getting ready to make breakfast. I'm like, I didn't want to like scream because it was like, I'm like trying to play it cool. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that'll be fine. And so she just kind of like, and she was really embarrassed to go like in public because she hasn't healed as much.
Yeah.
But she was like branching out, her and my daughter, because my daughter has a godson about his age. And so they went to like the indoor park and hung out a little bit. She came with us today to the celebration. She was at the pool. And she was just like, I feel comfortable that the people around you are not going to judge me. And we were just telling her, anybody that looks at you and is judging you for that, my family was like, F them.
Right.
And one of my TT's friends came to the celebration today. And we knew that her first husband was an abuser, but we didn't know like the extent of it. And she told the story to the girl that's here that none of us had heard before.
Wow.
And I guess she said that her husband, he would get drunk and he would beat her up. And so one night he got drunk and he would always tell her, she said he would catch her looking at like the shotguns and stuff in their home. And he would always tell her, if you pull that gun on me, you need to be prepared to use it. So anyway, he got drunk one night, he beat her up, he got in bed, she got the shotgun and she went to shoot him and it clicked, but it didn't shoot anything. And she said when it clicked, she kind of like snapped out of that fog she was in. So she put the gun back, she got in the bed, she went to sleep. And then like a couple of days later, she said, hey, Bo, I was trying to shoot in the air to like get rid of some birds that was picking my seeds out the garden and the gun didn't work. So he goes outside with the gun, she hears the shot. And so he's like, I don't know what's going on with you, the gun worked. And she was just like, So then the next time he gets drunk, he beats her up. He's in the bed. She went and she got the gun. And she said, instead of shooting him, she like kicked the bed. And she's like, I don't know if God is protecting you or if he was protecting me, but I'm getting ready to get my stuff and I'm getting ready to leave. And she said that he let her leave. Like she took the money out of his wallet and everything. And she said the whole time she was holding the shotgun on him. And she looked at her and she said, I think looking at you, I don't see somebody like old who would just like leave and be going through all of this stuff. She said, eventually you would have snapped. She was like, so I'm telling you, the best thing that you could have done was leave, because if he didn't kill you, you were going to snap. Like she was telling this girl that. And she was like, I thought about it so many times. Like she was saying, she used to think about it all the time. She was like, I don't know how you know. And she was like, because I'm like you. I was like going to snap. And so she said, listening to you and watching you, you would have snapped. And she was telling her, never put yourself in that position again. Like it's not your fault, but you know what the signs are. Don't go down that road because you're the type of person that would just like go crazy. And I never heard her tell this story before. When she told it, I'm getting goosebumps now because she's like the sweetest person. You would never expect for her to say something like that. And
Yeah.
then I was just like, wow, I never thought about it, but I do know that that happens with certain women. And the girl that's here now, I never knew that she ever thought about it. And then she was telling us that she used to think about it all the time. She was like, I used to think about different ways to just kind of like get rid of him. And I was like, oof, okay. This
Well,
woman was like, you would have snapped. But she gets stronger, and then she'll like backtrack. Like earlier, like yesterday, she was just like blaming herself for it because like she's like, I knew better. I should have left. There was like, he used to do this and I overlooked it. He used to do that. So she like goes back and forth with her emotions on it. But today was a good day for her. And getting up and participating with her son, she's been consistently doing that for like the last 3 days. So I'm
that's
proud of her for that.
that's good. So,
Yeah.
how much longer is she going to stay, and what's she going to do next in order to avoid that abusive relationship?
She's gonna be here until next week. She's supposed to leave on Wednesday. The good part about it is her parents, they're so supportive because their sister just got a divorce, and so they're renting a house together, and they paid the rent on that house for like 6 months just to
Wow.
give her and her son enough time to like get there, get on their feet, do what they need to do, which is it's so sad because you can tell that they liked her and their grandson living with them. They just like liked him there all the time, but now he's not. And I don't want to discount the other grandparents either, because I have to just say that was on their son. They didn't do anything wrong that I know of, but they don't have their grandson like at all, just because it's not safe. So I do have to try to remember that his family is suffering because of his actions as well as her family is suffering too. So I do try to think about the other grandparents as well. But I didn't notice about her, but she was like waiting to be 21 to get a bartender's license. So apparently she liked making drinks. And so she was trying to be a mixologist, which is like somebody who does all the like little tricks and stuff. And she said she was like, before him, she was like really outgoing and social. And that's just something she liked to do is like hang out with people, make drinks on, like that was her dream job. And then she used to do that for a little bit. But then when she got with him, he made her quit. And so she was trying to get back into that. We seen, well, I didn't see it. My daughter seen on Groupon out here, there was like a class that you could take. It was like a 2-hour class or something where they teach you to make all of these drinks. And so they went there and my daughter was like, she just kind of like lit up. She liked it. She had so much fun. So I think she's starting to just kind of like see beyond him, but she does have those moments in her mind where she's like goes back a little bit, but she's doing a lot better,
Well,
a lot.
being that you were in an abusive relationship, you probably can speak to this. And I've known other people that were in abusive relationships. You kind of go into a shell and
Yeah.
you become a fraction of who you are. But if you can
Hmm.
get away from it and build some confidence, you can actually bring yourself out of that situation. And clearly you have too. It maybe took a while to do it, but
Yeah.
your state of mind and your personality had to be vastly different while you were in the midst of that abuse.
Oh yeah. Walking on eggshells, like that's exactly what it is. Like you kind of learn to just look at it like a field with a bunch of mines in it. You learn how to maneuver in that field without stepping on the mines. And even like to this day, there's like a couple of things that stick with me. One of the things is my daughter's dad was real like particular. So when I would like vacuum the floor, you know how it has the lines in the carpet? Like the lines had to like line up perfectly. And then
Wow.
I would like count when he was getting ready to come home. I would always tell my daughter, like, hey, whatever it is you need to do, like get your little buddy, like her little bear, and get your snacks or whatever, go in your room and get in the bed because I have to vacuum the floor. Because if he sees like a footprint or anything on that carpet that's not lined up just right, he's tripping. So she would like do what she needed to do. We both had our little system. She would get in her room, sit on her bed, and she would have to wait for him to come home so that she can get off her bed and like walk on the carpet. But he had to like see that the carpet was like perfectly vacuumed, all the lines is in a row. To this day, that's how I vacuum the carpet. Like every night before I go to bed when I vacuum, like it drives people crazy, but it has to be like lined up. And it's like, even when I try to just like vacuum it normal, put the vacuum up and go to bed, I will like wake up at like 1 o'clock in the morning and like line the carpet. I do it. I can't help it. it's at a point now where it's like, okay, I'm just gonna have to live with that. So some of the stuff, it just doesn't leave you. And I was
Well,
trying to tell her that you'll always carry some of it with you, but as long as it's not like boggling you down all the time, you're gonna be okay. You
well,
just have
yeah.
to, it's a new normal.
Sometimes the things you learn in those situations are beneficial to you later on. I've
Mm,
told this story before, and I have a feeling it's the same with you because you seem to have this aptitude. When you have somebody that's abusive towards you and you're walking on eggshells, like you said, you
mhm.
learn how to read people's faces.
Yeah,
You learn how to read body language and try to anticipate what might be coming so that you can maybe manipulate them out of it. I found
yeah,
myself doing that as like a 7-year-old kid, and that kind of carried with me over my lifetime that I'm always reading people every time I look at them, trying to get a sense of who they are. And it wasn't always for negative reasons. It might be being a salesman or just dealing with people in the media. You watch them and you learn quickly who you're really dealing with when you look at them closely and pay attention to what they're doing. So for me, that was a positive. A lot of
yeah.
people would say that's neurotic because you're carrying that over. Like so they may say the same thing about the way you vacuum your floor. Um, but I think we learn how to, I think once we get out of that situation, we learn how to make it a positive as opposed to the negative it was back when we were experiencing those things.
Yeah, I think like normal people, I don't want to say normal, but people who don't have to go through that, sometimes they'll doubt or question
Yeah.
their instincts. But for us, it's like your instincts, that's the thing that kept you alive. That's the thing that kept you through that situation. So your instincts could tell you, or you could look at this person and see when they're in a bad mood, see if they walk a certain type of way. Okay, maybe he had too much to drink, or maybe certain words that they say, you're like, okay, so you're just constantly like reading the room and other people, and you have this instinct about what's going to happen next. And a lot of times you're trying to prevent it from happening. So I
Right.
do think that we learn to appreciate our instincts more and doubt our instincts less. Because if your instincts is telling you something is off, this person is not looking right, sounding right, acting right, you know that something bad could be on the other end of that versus someone who hasn't gone through that. They could be like, oh, I'm just tripping. You know what I mean? And they could just dismiss it. But I think for myself, I learned really quickly to like when I get that hair on the back of my neck standing up, it's for a reason and I'm not ignoring it. And I
Right.
think like a lot of people with PTSD especially, like they know that. It's unfortunate, but our instincts just kick in, I think, a little bit quicker than most because
Well,
one of the few situations.
yeah, one of I think where you and I have a common string too is that when you're with somebody who's abusive, like my father or your husband at the time or boyfriend, um, you would think when somebody beats you down all the time, every day, there's two ways you can come out of this. You can come out timid and scared and lack confidence and be kind of rolled up in a little ball. I mean, that's their intention. That's what they want to do to you. But still, there are people like you and I, and maybe my brother and some other people who go the opposite way. They
Yeah.
realize they survived this thing. Now they're confident. Now they're bullish. They'll step up and get in anybody's face. They become confident. And it's weird how people react differently to that experience.
It is. I think like most people, sometimes it takes a while. Like for her, I know it's gonna well, it took me like years to get there too. And it'll take time. But when you look back on it, you're just like, yeah, like if I could survive that, like I could survive pretty much anything. Like I'm gonna be good, you know? So you do kind of learn how strong you are by going through that. Even
Right.
though when you're in it, you don't feel strong, you feel like powerless or helpless in some types of ways, but once you get to the other end of it, and especially like for me, because I used to volunteer at the women's shelter all the time, and you see that there's so many other people who didn't make it out of their situation, or they
Right.
went back and they were never able to get back out again. And you see that, and you're just like, okay, so I got through that for a reason. So it kind of like gives you a little bit more strength to where I don't scare as easily. Like
Right.
I really don't. And I think I see that with you too, when people leave like a negative comment or they say something weird, you're looking at them like, this is nothing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So you don't scare easily because
No.
you have to get really, really thick skin in order to go through that. Like really alligator thick skin to go through that and survive it. And then to be able to like talk about it and deal with it. It's not normal. It's kind of like a new normal. Like we're never who we are before that. And when we come out on the other end of it, we're completely changed. It's a different normal. That's all.
The first 23 years of my life, I dealt with my father. For the last 40 years, I've been married. And this is why I relate to one quote by Bernie Mac, where he came out on stage and said, I ain't scared of you motherfuckers. What's to be scared of? I've dealt with some of the worst possible people. You don't scare me. Some dumb Trump-a-fuck sitting behind his keyboard thinking he's tough and not willing to back it up. Um, and
That's good for us, but it's not always good for our families,
no,
especially mine. They were recently worried because my daughter and I, we work the polls during the elections, like we've always done that. And so they were talking to us earlier today, like, okay, if you guys are like hell bent on doing that, then you need to pick somebody out of this group who my Uncle Freddie was like, yeah, I'll do it, to like go with you guys.
no,
Because if you listen to Republicans, they're like, we don't need you to vote. We need you to watch the vote, pay attention to the vote. They're changing election officials. They're putting their own people in charge in certain places. And I'm like, there's no way I'm supposed to sit back and let them do that in Vegas. Are you kidding?
yeah.
So I think for me, not feeling that fear sometimes for the people who care about me is not an easy thing to watch. So I do want to acknowledge their concern there.
I will say this, if your abuser happened around now, given the personality you have, and if there was an available shotgun, God help him. I don't think I'd bet on him in that particular circumstance.
No, and I know my true crime history too, so let's not do that.
Yeah, yeah. You and my wife listen to so much true crime, you know how to commit the perfect murder, and that's what keeps me in line. It wouldn't
I
be
don't
hard.
think I don't think like Republicans when they try to just regress women so badly. When you look at like 1920s, 1930s, a lot of husbands came up like mysteriously
Yeah,
dead and stomach ailments and all this other kind of stuff. There's this one lady, her name was like Nanny Doss. They called her the giggling granny because it was like four of her husbands that turned up, pushing up daisies. So when you look at that, it was just kind of like back then, they used to have poison clubs. Okay, don't get me started. But women used to be like so beat down that this was kind of like their only way out. And so they would resort to that kind of often. And then the only time they would get caught when it was like the third, the fourth, the fifth husband, and they all happen to have life insurance policies. Like they would start to get caught. But I think they were put in situations to where they were just so desperate. And I don't want to see women going back to where they feel so desperate. And I don't want somebody's man coming up missing or,
no. And
you know,
I
pushing
have
up daisies either.
there's a saying that people say, if mama's not happy, nobody's happy. In my, in my house, if mama ain't happy, somebody could die. And it's probably going to be me. So
Words to live by.
words to live by. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Old Soul is with me today. It's Thursday. She's frequently here on Thursday, sometimes different days, but usually Thursday. And Old Soul, you and I have kind of had a tradition on the show. And usually it's been you making some kind of comment or painting some kind of picture that worries me might cause some people dismay when they're eating breakfast or lunch. We've done that. So now I want to offer up something that may cause some disruption along those lines. Maybe not as graphic as some of the things we've heard, but you remember George Santos, right?
Yes.
Yeah. George is probably going to go to jail, but he needs to make money between now. He's not in Congress anymore, so he's not got the government check coming. I don't know
Oh
if you've,
God.
I don't
What
know
does
if
this
you've,
fool up to?
I don't know if you knew this, but apparently George Santos is starting an OnlyFans account. And Lord knows what the fuck he's going to do with that.
Feet pictures. It's got to be
What?
feet pics. It's gonna be feet pics. I can see him doing that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know enough about OnlyFans. You're younger, maybe you do. Is OnlyFans all about sexual channels, or is there just some other stuff? One of the things I saw, it said he was going to show the backgrounds of his life. And I'm thinking, you don't have much of a life. You're on trial. You're going to go to jail. Is it always nudity and or sexuality, or is it normal stuff, relatively normal stuff too?
If
Like,
you want to make money on there, you got to be a little kinky. Nobody's gonna pay to watch OnlyFans and you sitting there reading the dictionary. That's not
yeah,
gonna happen. You got to be
yeah.
doing something a little kinky on there now.
Now, when I ask you this, I ask you simply because you're old, not to suggest that you're a subscriber to some OnlyFans account. I'm sure you're not.
No, but I will say that just think about Pornhub or any of those other sites, right? You're
Yeah.
going to get paid off of views. And if you're sitting there and you're not doing anything, you're not going to get any views. So you got to do something. He's not on OnlyFans reading the Bible. I'm telling you, that's
You
just
can't.
not happening.
So what you're saying is, you can't just sit there with your thumb up your ass. Well, unless people are interested in and into that kind of shit. I don't know. But George Santos has an OnlyFans, and I can almost guarantee you this little promotional announcement will gain him no subscribers based on people who listen to the Rational Boomer podcast. But it just amazes
He,
me how these people will grift in any possible way.
he
And
might get Jimmy Kimmel.
what's that? Yeah, Mike get Jimmy Kimmel
Jimmy Kimmel, because remember Jimmy Kimmel when he did
cameo.
the one with Cameo, and Jimmy Kimmel was paying him to say stuff,
Yeah.
but then first of all, he sued Jimmy Kimmel behind that.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody fumble the bag like that on purpose.
No.
So, I mean, if you have Jimmy Kimmel paying you $300 to read sentences, why not? I'd read it. Jimmy Kimmel, you watching? Send me some crazy stuff. I will read it. But I don't know what he's gonna be doing on there, but it's gonna be pretty kinky, I think.
Wow. Well, we know he has a tendency to dress up as his alter ego. Maybe he'll do
Mm-hmm.
that. Can't even remember what the name was. It was anyway. Let's talk about something serious. One of the things that's kind of preeminent in the news and news upcoming is the Supreme Court. There's a lot of fucked up shit going on with the Supreme Court. We're at the end of their term, so they're going to be coming out with a lot of decisions, some very, very important. Most important is probably this claim of absolute immunity that Donald Trump has asked for, and he's waiting for the Supreme Court to give him that immunity. I'm afraid that's not going to happen. That would be so counterproductive to the Supreme Court and would give every president, current and future presidents, carte blanche to do fucking anything, even to the point of sending SEAL Team 6 out to kill their opponent. I don't know that Donald Trump is realizing that, but he should maybe think about it. Now, this announcement could come today, tomorrow, certainly by next week, because it has to come before July 1st. What are your thoughts on what they're going to do? I know we talked about this before, and the idea of sending it back to the lower court, which is possible, which would just cause more delay.
I thought that it had to come before June 21st, but I could be wrong. One
Well,
of the
maybe.
things that I'm not like holding my breath. I'm just waiting for them to make their decision. But I'm pretty sure that they're not going to say he's absolutely immune.
No,
But I
that
do
would make
think behind
sense.
the scenes, Thomas, Alito, the usual suspects, I do think that maybe they're trying to figure out some kind of way to make a decision, but not make a decision, or just give him carte blanche to do whatever the heck he wants. And the reason I think that's going on behind the scenes is because Amy Coney Barrett is like saying stuff. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
So it's kind of like, I don't understand why she doesn't realize her being a strict conservative the way that she says she is, and she's around all these strict conservative men. why she would think for 1 second that if you give them an inch, they're not going to take a whole mile.
Right.
So I do think that she could possibly be a little turned off by some of the talks going on behind the scenes. Personally, I think they're just going to delay it for him. I think they're going to send it back down to the lower court, ask them to maybe fine tune what it is that they're asking a little bit more, and then send it back. I think that's going to be their delay tactic there. I do think if they wanted to do the Republican Party a solid, they would just flat out rule against it and then let him go through the legal process, because he's not helping them at all. And the more they delay for him, the more emboldened he is, and the more he brings them down with his rhetoric and his unpredictable behavior. I think that's the political way to say that.
Well, let's be honest. If they had any brains at all after the inauguration of Joe Biden, they would have cut ties and let him twist in the wind, because he's been nothing but a liability to the Republican Party. And it's getting worse and worse. The ironic thing is this question was brought to the Supreme Court, and it's a ridiculous question. There's no question what the answer is. But the Supreme Court said, oh, let's look into it. This has probably got some good questions. Total immunity for a citizen and a former president to do whatever he wants. We really need to think about that. And then after taking 3 to 4 months to do that, still not coming up with a decision, if that's how it turns out. That just tells you how broken the Supreme Court is.
I don't know about broken, but it's very corrupt.
Absolutely.
I think that they are pretty shameless with it. You know, when it comes to taking away rights of women, no problem. Yeah. When it comes to Donald Trump can just run and do whatever the hell he wants to, you know, we really need to think about that.
Yeah.
And it's clear as day when they say no one man is above the law. We know that's not true, but they could at least pretend that is true. Yeah. That's how shameless they are about it. I think for them, it's all about the delay tactic. I don't think anybody is going to be satisfied with it on either side. I just think that it's going to be delayed, and I think that's what we are expecting. I don't expect them to do anything else. Like, I don't expect for them to make a firm decision either way. It's just going to be a delay tactic. Right. That's what I think.
But there's obviously something going on in the Supreme Court. As you said, Amy Coney Barrett is kind of lashing out at Clarence Thomas. He said something like, he's so laser focused on history, he can't see the forest for the trees. I don't know exactly what that means. I mean, I know what it means, but I don't know how it's tied to what's going on. But I have a feeling it's setting something up for a future, decision, try to cover her ass a little bit. And then there's another person who is a former Supreme Court clerk, doesn't work there anymore, but had some negative things to say about this situation with Donald Trump's immunity case. And they were pretty concerned about just the way that it's been handled, to obviously go out to try to delay this thing and work against the Constitution, work against the electoral process. And there was concern there. There was a time, and I'm sure you remember it, when you never heard anything about the Supreme Court. You never really had an opinion about the Supreme Court. You may not even know everybody that's on the Supreme Court. It was just presumed they do the right thing because they're the highest court in the land. Now we all know who's on the Supreme Court. We all know it's corrupt and criminal, and we all have opinions on it. And I think the heat is starting to create problems within the inside of the Supreme Court. And that's just going to get worse, especially when the Republicans don't win in November and the Democrats take power. They've got to be looking ahead and saying, we're fucked here. Because if he stacks this court, or if he tries to get somebody impeached, they may just win. And so I think the Supreme Court is going through some shit right now. They're finally realizing, a little late, but they're finally realizing they could be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, look at what they're doing. You take rights away from women, and it's so archaic. Even like, I never thought, like, I'm so serious. I never in my wildest dreams thought that the Supreme Court would be on board with dismantling the Violence Against Women Act. Like I never thought that when you leave an abusive relationship, you file a restraining order, and they say, okay, well, the guy who's stalking you, he can have a gun, but not only can he have a gun, but he can have whatever gun he wants. Not only that, but if you file child support, oh yeah, he has access to your address as you're trying to leave him. I never thought that I would see, not just the Supreme Court, I just never thought that I would even see anybody say that, oh yeah, that's okay. I never thought that even like an abuser would have the audacity to even try to escalate that to the Supreme Court. But the thing is that conservative, evangelical, toxic base at the bottom of the gutter, they're like, oh yeah, these are our homies now. So
Yeah.
to them, it's kind of like the purge. Let's go ham. Anything we wanted to do, even thing we thought about doing it, let's do it. And they are just doing their bidding. And it's like, you would never think if they didn't have the Supreme Court that we have right now, these rules that's going up to them, especially with guns, they wouldn't even have heard these cases. It would just be like, all right, yeah, get out of here. It's nothing that they would have even taken up. It's such a joke. But they are taking people's lives and they're just playing. I don't want to say playing with it, but they have no regard for it at all. Like it just doesn't matter to them.
Well,
And I never thought that I would see that day. And then you even think about I'm trying to think of what it's called, what they just ruled on with the guns,
bump stocks. The
bump stocks. I live in Vegas and I remember the Route 99 shooting.
Right.
And that guy had bump stock guns. He had 12 of them. He loaded them up, he laid them next to him, and he was shooting. And then once he was done shooting that gun, he would throw it, pick up another, and then just the reason he was able to do it pretty much nonstop, shooting like 600 people, was because of a bump stock guns that he was able to have. You have bipartisanship ban that.
Right.
So that's like Republicans is like, nah, this ain't cool. And we have a gun fetish. We don't want to see this. And you have Democrats, heck no, we don't want to see this. And then you have the Supreme Court saying, well, this guy over here gave me a lavish vacation, so y'all just gonna have to deal with it. I never thought I would see anything like that. It's just like people can be slaughtered and they just don't care, like literally slaughtered. If you ever see an autopsy photo of someone, especially little children, who have gotten shot by those type of weapons and you can't recognize them, they're missing limbs, and their parents can only identify them through shoes or a birthmark, and they just say that's okay.
Well, the ironic thing about it, the one caveat to this is Republicans and the Supreme Court thinks anybody can have any amount of guns, regardless of their circumstances, and do whatever the hell they want with them, and people die every day because of it. But the one caveat is all people can have as many guns as they want, unless your name is Hunter Biden and you had a gun for 11 days locked in a lockbox and you happen to do drugs. That's the bridge too far. And that's where the hypocrisy in this whole thing is.
And that's how big of a hypocrisy that is right now? They have a case going up right now that will allow addicts to no longer have bans on having weapons. Right. But at the same time, they're turning around and they're prosecuting Hunter Biden for that.
Right.
So it is partisanship at its finest and hypocrisy at its finest. I just never thought that. For me, when I look at the Supreme Court, first of all, I always thought RGB was like a rock star. You just love her, right? Other than that, you just look at them like this is the law of the land. But more importantly, they're put there to like protect us and keep us safe in a legal way and try to keep that balance. But they don't care about our safety. So I don't know how you maneuver in a world where the people who are supposed to protect you and look out for you, they don't care. It's not like they slip in. It's like they don't care and they do everything they can to prove to you. And they don't care. You're on your own.
Well, over and above the immunity case that we're going to get a decision on from the Supreme Court this month, there's another case that they're going to decide. And somebody brought it to the Supreme Court suggesting that abusers should not be able to access guns. And
Yeah.
somebody fought against it. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Supreme Court decides this. I mean, they're all about bump stocks. So what's going to happen when they say, no, abusers can have guns too because Second Amendment? I hope to God they go on the right side of this.
Especially when you look at the guy who initiated this, who's brought the case to this level, because there's a starting point.
Yeah,
This guy was like prolific abuser. And when his wife left him, he was stalking her. He chased her down in his car. He shot 3 people trying to get at her. And then, of course, he goes to jail. You can't have a gun no more. Look at what you did. And this is the guy who they are saying his rights are more important than abuse victims. Not just abuse victims, but their children as well. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times, especially with these family annihilators, they're not going to just come in there and shoot this woman. They're going to come in there, take her out, take the children out. And if they don't want to deal with what they done, then they're going to take themselves out too.
right.
And you
right.
just think about, why would they put a gun in that person's hand?
It seems
And
like
then the
a
guy,
no-brainer.
when he was trying to get away, he actually shot a law enforcement officer on top of that. So anybody who doesn't know this case, they need to read about the guy who brought the case in the first place. Shot a cop, shot people trying to get to one woman. And this is
Right.
the guy who writes. They are trying to say he speaks for all battered men. I agree. He speaks for all of them. They are pretty scummy people. But they're saying that these people have more rights than the rest of us, I guess.
The thing I don't understand is, when the Supreme Court comes out and does the things they do, you presume it's to benefit or support the right wing, the Republicans, the Trump-lefucks.
Mm-hmm.
But how do they not see that by overturning Roe v. Wade and these gun laws that 75, 80% of the people support, and they want to take them away? How do they see it as doing a favor to the Republicans? Because these are all just non-starters for elections. I mean, I've said before, I think overturning Roe v. Wade is going to be the most devastating thing in this election for the Republicans. And we've got a hint of that in 2022. They were
Yeah.
expecting a red wave. It wasn't a red wave. And I think a lot of that can be attested to overturning Roe v. Wade, because they'd done it a few months before that. It was fresh in people's minds. But the Republicans had the audacity to believe that, they'll just forget about it. They'll get over it. Now, if they think that, they don't know women or men that support women. But everything they do, while it seems like a win for the Republicans, it's the death knell for the upcoming election, because the vast majority of the people disagree with them.
I think it's twofold with that. I really just think, they say stuff like the elitists, but in my mind, I say that they see themselves as the ruling class,
Yeah.
especially when you throw God behind it, because it's like by any means necessary just to justify their evilness. Like, yes, Donald Trump is a horrible person, but is he going to help us reach our agenda? Yes. Okay, then we're on board with him. They see themselves as the ruling class. So yes, 79, 80% of the population doesn't want this, but we know what's best for you. We know what direction we want this country to go in. So we have the courts rigged, we have the Supreme Court. So we're going to do these things because we're telling you that this is what is best for this country, or that's what they think is best for this country. So they look at themselves as the ruling class. They really do.
Yeah.
And then the reason that they're comfortable doing it is because they take comfort in purging people from the voter rolls. They take comfort in gerrymandering districts. They do so much to discourage the vote, to where they feel that they can suppress the vote enough so that, especially with the Electoral College, to where it like tips it in their favor. So that's why they feel comfortable doing it, because they have all of these, like Roger Stone, all the dirty tricks up their sleeves that they really do feel like they can get over. And also they take comfort in their part of the electorate, keeping them focused on culture wars and ignorant, and just dumbed down. You'll never go to a deep red state and see them have updated history books or a
No,
full library that's full of a bunch of different books from a bunch of different authors and a bunch of different perspectives. They don't operate like that. They keep them dumbed down and angry and distracted for a reason. And they take comfort in that because they know, okay, we got these people over here. They're stupid. They're going to vote against their own best interests. They're going to do whatever the heck we tell them to do. But for the rest of the people over here, okay, yeah, we got gerrymandering. We got voter roll purges. We got closed polls locations. We're going to make them stand out there for 10, 12 hours in the heat. And by the way, don't even think about giving them a bottle of water. You know what I mean? So they do all of those things for everybody who doesn't fall in line. And I do think they take comfort in that. And they are pretty emboldened by that as well.
they are emboldened, but I think where they fucked up was they've been doing, people have to understand, even though it seems like now it's so terrible and all this is going on, they've been doing this for decades and
Yeah.
decades. And because we were apathetic, because we didn't understand all of what was going on, we just kind of laid there and took it. And
Mm-hmm.
this is built up over decades. But the one thanks you can give is to Donald Trump for bringing this to the surface like a fucking fever blister. Now they let the genie out of the bottle. We've seen all the bullshit they've done. We are experiencing the bullshit they're doing and how they're kind of infringing on all of our rights and trying to take rights away. It's going to be harder to campaign against that once we know what we know and what we've seen what we've seen. So they're just falling back on what they've done for decades and decades, but they woke a sleeping giant. And I don't know that it's going to work out well for them now that we know what we know.
Yeah, it really is like when you think about a abusive relationship, like your abuser never like on your first date bust your lip. Like that
No,
don't happen on a first date. They have to build up to that. And so it's been like decades of them just like building up. Like, okay, they do this, we get kind of like comfortable with that, we adjust to that. And then it's like, okay, it's the next thing. Like Donald Trump didn't happen overnight. Like the Republican Party built up to Donald Trump.
right.
And then they even have a lot of people with a victim's mentality. And when I say that, I mean, like, I hear people say, well, if the Republican Party wins, then we deserve that. We deserve to suffer because not enough people turned out to vote, or not enough people did this, or not enough people did that. It's the same thing when you're in an abusive relationship. It's kind of like, well, you know, if I would have had dinner on time, or if I would have had the carpet lined up, he wouldn't have had to be tripping when he came home. Like you justify their actions and you make it okay to why they're doing what they're doing to you is acceptable. And I hear people say that all the time. Like, if they win, we deserve it. And whatever comes with that, we deserve it. And I don't like saying that because it's like, okay, yeah, people should have got out to vote and we have to deal with the consequences of that. But what about these children who they don't get to eat in the summertime? So they should suffer. They couldn't go vote. It's not their choice. So now you have these girls over here who've been abused and raped. And because not enough people got out to vote, they deserve that. We don't deserve leaders who take away our rights and beat us down and
Right.
they try to marginalize people and try to make demons out of people just for existing. As a country, we don't deserve that and we deserve better than that. But there's so many people who think, okay, well, if they win, we deserve it. We're going to have to deal with it. Immigrants, they don't deserve to go into concentration camps, pretty much.
Right.
They don't deserve to be separated from their children and their spouses. Like, they don't deserve that. But there's people who justify in their head that if the Republican Party take over, if Donald Trump win, we deserve it. And I'm like, speak for yourself. I
Yeah.
don't deserve that. These hungry babies over here and these women who are abused, they don't deserve that. So I will
Well,
speak up and I will say, they don't deserve that. We don't deserve that. So when you say that, speak for yourself. I don't agree with
well,
that at all.
well, good, because we can agree to disagree on something, because I have to own up to the fact that I've said that before, more so out of frustration than anything. I've said the young people are kind of in charge in this election and the next election. We're fighting like hell to make sure Donald Trump doesn't become president. The Republicans don't regain power. And people have said, well, the young people aren't going to vote for Biden because of this. And I've said, listen, the future is yours. It's not mine. My life isn't going to change much at all if Donald Trump becomes president. Mine's kind of locked up and I got 20 years max. But if you don't have enough common sense to vote properly or vote at all, you're going to be stuck with something, and everybody's accountable for the things they do. And that's like saying, you get what you deserve. The difference in what you're talking about with abuse and all this stuff is everything that's going on with the Republican Party has been exposed.
Mhm.
If you have any common sense at all, you can see it, you can feel it, you've heard it. You have an opportunity to fight to save your democracy, to fight to save yourself. If you choose not to fight, how else do you look at it? I mean, if you're not going to fight when it's sitting there in front of you, it's much different than an abuser. These people are trapped. We're not trapped anymore. We have the option. We hold the control to our destiny simply by voting. And if even still, with all the things you know, and you don't fight for that destiny, well, maybe you don't deserve it. I say that not that I believe that's what's going to happen. I don't believe that's what's going to happen. I believe Donald Trump will lose. But there comes a time when we have to be responsible and accountable for ourselves. And we have to do things that might be uncomfortable or stuff we don't like to do. But that's what getting through life is all about. There's a lot of things you don't like or maybe can't stomach, but you have to do at that moment. And if you don't, you have to pay, you have to be responsible and accountable for what you did or didn't do. So I'm not saying we deserve it as a country. I'm just trying to make the point that you have an opportunity here. It's sitting there right in front of you. It's not up for debate. The criminality, the corruption, the authoritarianism is right there. And if you think at all, you know how to stop it. So you need to take that step and actually fucking stop it.
I think that we have to, and I think that we will. But I look at it as, what about those who are not old enough to vote yet?
Well,
So we
yeah,
have children
that's a
in
different
school
story.
who they are the innocent people in all of this. So if we don't step up and do what we need to do, then you have people running amok with guns and mass shootings. Like, there's so many that they can't even report them every day. And then there's innocent people that's just on standby. And I try not to drive my family crazy when I do this, but there's a large part of the Republican Party, oh, they know better. And the people on the bottom, they just falling in line and doing what they tell them to do. But there is a part they really just don't know any better. And it's
Right.
just kind of like, my grandmother used to always be like, ooh, God bless the babies and fools, because like they just don't know. And even like when you hear about the guy who's just saying Joe Biden is going to take away my Social Security, and
Yeah.
you're just like, what? Like, that guy really he doesn't know better. And so somebody has to kind of like, I don't know how to say it, but kind of like protect this fool over here, because I'm almost looking at him with like a diminished capacity type of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I need to protect you from yourself, because you really don't know what you're doing at this point. It's like, take away grandpa keys. You don't need to be driving. So it's like, when you look at vulnerable people like that, and then you look at children who don't have a voice, for me, I can never say that, because when I say that, it's almost kind of like they are going to pay for the mistakes that we make. And when the stakes are this high, they don't deserve to pay that price.
No, they don't.
Just
They don't deserve to pay the price, but that just goes further than what I'm saying. Not only do you have to, as an adult, as a voter, you have to realize that you're not just in it to save yourself. You've got to save your kids, your grandkids, your nieces and nephews, the vulnerable people in your life. That's your responsibility. This is not the time to be lazy. This is not the time to be complacent. Somebody has to be accountable. We were accountable for allowing Donald Trump to get in office. We didn't deserve what happened when Donald Trump was in office or even after he's been out of office. But it doesn't matter whether we deserve it or not. It's there. So we've got to take that moment in time and say, fuck it, I don't want to do that again. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to pout because I don't like what's going on in Israel. You've got a real problem right here, right now, and you have the opportunity to fix it. And if you're not willing to fix it and save your kids and your grandkids and your family, I don't know what the fuck to do with you.
That's a good conversation for those single issue voters.
Right.
You know, like when you look at the Republican Party and they will say stuff like, well, I'm pro-life, so I'm voting for Trump because I know he'll put a national ban on abortion, right? And it's like, that's a single issue voter. That one issue that's so important to you could cause so much damage to so many other people. But when you look at him getting in there and him banning abortion, is it really worth mass shootings? Is it really worth children being hungry? Is it really worth the Violence Against Women Act being overturned? Is it really worth like what's going to happen if he's putting tariffs on everything and you can't
Right.
afford to feed your family anymore?
Right.
That one issue is worth everything else. And sometimes when you ask a pro-lifer that question, they will say, yeah, absolutely. Like they will say that with the most ignorant smugness that you could find. But when you talk to somebody who is reasonable, like a Gen Zer, and you say, okay, so what's going on in Gaza? Is it worth women not having rights? Is it worth you not being able to pay your student loans? Is it worth you not being able to afford a house when you graduate? Is it worth this, 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 and this? When you put it to them like that, then they'll just say, you know what, I don't like Biden, but yeah, the good outweighs the bad when they look at it like that.
Right.
I think some people you can reach with that single issue thing, but then other people you can't, because single issue voters are some of the most selfish people on the face of this planet, because there's one issue that's important to you. So it's like the hell with everybody else.
Right.
You know what I mean? Especially when it's something like that. Well, honestly, you could just mind your business. If you don't want to have an abortion, don't have one. Problem solved. How does that affect you? That's kind of like the Karen effect with me, when they try to force their own personal beliefs on other people. It's just like, mind your business, stay in your lane, do you, I'm gonna do me. And we will coexist peacefully. I don't think they know how to do that.
Well, in just over a week, we're going to have a moment in time, if everything goes as planned, that I think is going to be an absolute pivot point for those people that are lost or confused or misinformed about Donald Trump. And I'm talking about the possibility of this debate. I've said I don't know that he'll show up, but he's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. He's the
Yeah.
one that called for the debate. If he doesn't show up, then they're going to say you're a pussy ass bitch, which is the worst thing you can do to a narcissist. Or he'll go to the debate and he's going to have to comply with rules that don't work with his strategies and tactics.
Mhm.
But we've seen recently how he's really kind of unhinged. He has trouble going off on tangents and meandering. We heard about it when he talked to the CEOs. These people were inclined to vote for him. And when they walked out, they were shaking their heads going, the fuck is this guy saying? Then there's an author who came out who's got a book coming out about Donald Trump. He interviewed him 6 times between 2021 and 2023. He's talked to Donald Trump more than any other journalist since he's left office. And he said the same thing. He didn't even remember him. He's talked to him 6 times. He didn't even remember him. He had to repeat stories. He told lies. Like he told they were, for whatever reason, they were talking about stars because Donald Trump loves stars. And Joan Rivers came up and she says, oh yeah, Joan Rivers loves me. She voted for me in 2016, which is,
Oh, died in 2014.
yeah, she died in 2014. So, I mean, this is what we're dealing with. Everybody's worried about Joe Biden, and Joe Biden's been in this business for a long time. He's pretty wily. He may not be as fast talking as we like, but Donald Trump is going to be a fucking mess. And unlike what happens with Fox News and OAN, where you only get part of the story or you get lies, this is going to be live on television. Everybody's going to want to see it, including the Trump fans. They're going to want to see Donald Trump win this one and make Joe Biden look stupid. Instead, they're going to watch Donald Trump look stupid. So I think this is a big point in time when a lot of people who maybe support Donald Trump will either have to lie about what they've seen or change their stance.
Yeah. If you hear fireworks, that's just my family out there lighting fireworks, just so you know. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but I can hear it.
No, I don't.
Okay, but anyway, I've been watching these people, especially Sean Hannity, and it's so funny because what they are saying makes absolutely no sense.
No.
Because they're saying that there's a drug out there that you can take it. Like you could be lost, dazed, confused, wandering around, don't know where you're going, dementia ridden. And there's a drug out there that you can take that can bring your memory back and put you on your A game for like 2 hours. And then boom, you just drop back to being slow again, right? And I'm sitting here like, where's the FDA? Because we need to approve this drug. And dementia patients, we need to give that to them, 2 tablets a day, you good, right?
Right.
Where is this drug? Because they're saying like Ritalin. They haven't said Vyvanse yet, but I do know of the drug Vyvanse. These drugs last for like 6 to 8 hours, if not more.
Right.
And they're saying that he'll be good for 2 hours and he's going to crash back to being slow. And it's like, there's no drug that does that. And when you ask them the name of the drug, they can't give you the name of the drug because no drug out there exists. And then if the drug did exist, why is Biden only taking it on the debate night? Why isn't he taking it when he's at the G7 summit?
Right.
Why isn't he taking it when all the cameras are on him? Like, why is he only taking it when he has to debate Donald Trump? Or I'm like, I don't understand. It makes no sense. I don't know how it is on the right, if it's landing or if people are believing that or not. And I've like been reading ground news, and from what I can see, it's not landing on the right or the left. They're just spinning in circles right now because there's no drug that exists that does that. Like they make it seem like Popeye taking his spinach, like he just springs up into action real quick and then he goes back down. Like that's Popeye and that's spinach and that's a cartoon. That's
Right.
not real. In real life, there's no drug that does that.
Well,
And they keep pushing it, but I don't think, unless I'm wrong, I don't think that the right believes it. I think that they'll use it as an excuse. So after the debates, Trump does horribly. I can see them all getting online and using that lie to justify it, but not believing it. They're just doing it, I guess, to save face. But they've got to know there is no drug out there that's going to jack Joe up like Popeye on spinach for like an hour or so. And then he loses his muscles and he just goes back to being weak.
Well, the ironic thing about it is Donald Trump for a while was saying, we need Joe Biden to take a drug test because he's on some kind of drug. When Donald Trump was required to take a drug test when he went to talk to his probationary officer, and he refused.
I didn't know you could refuse it.
I didn't either. I thought you'd have to
I
go
know
to
you could go to jail.
I think it's going to play a big role when sentencing comes around. That's why I think Donald Trump's going to have a lot, over and above the 34 felony charges. He's going to have to deal with numerous violations of the gag order, not taking the drug test. This is all going to come into play when he's sentenced. And this is why I think it's going to be hard for them not to sentence him to prison. Because he's just been so impossible to deal with and disrespectful to the court.
For me, I feel like if I hear two-tier justice system from the right one more time, I'm just going to lose it.
Yeah.
Because I've never known anybody to go to first of all, you go to your probation officer on Zoom. Second of all, you tell them what you are, what you're not going to do. And then you get to wait for sentencing for them to tell you your fate.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, you didn't comply with your first meeting with your parole officer. We'll see you on Monday. That's it. It's like, it really boggles my mind, the things that this man can get away with and have the audacity to say he's a victim.
Right.
Or and I know that there has got to be some MAGA people who have been in the system. They know the game.
Right.
And they have got to know that this is not how any of this goes. This is not how even if you're not in the system, if you just looked at any just random person and said, well, yeah, they did probation over Zoom and they declined a drug test. And it's like you are sitting here saying to this man, yeah, that's okay for me, but that's not okay for you. In essence, you are better than me, and you can just do whatever the heck you want to do. And like they are telling him that with their action. I'm baffled that I'm
I,
baffled that he's making it to his sentencing without the judge stepping in and saying, yeah, that ain't how this go.
we're, go-
I don't get it. I
we're
don't
going
get
to
it.
find out, we're going to find out a lot about what's going on with him and how he's being handled when that sentencing comes along on July 11th. Um, we know that Judge Juan Marchand is a pretty serious kind of a conservative judge, and he has to be upset by the non-compliance that Donald Trump has done by violating the gag order, by not taking the drug test. This has to have a serious impact on the sentencing. And when he lays out his sentence, we'll know what the fuck is up. It'll either be really strong or a travesty. And I just don't think it's going to be a weak thing that he's going to get away with. He's in a much different situation. He was the former president while he was on trial, but now he's a fucking convict.
Yeah,
You don't get a lot of rights when you're a convict.
it better impact his sentence. I know that they gave him passes that the rest of us wouldn't get. Like I
Absolutely.
know for a fact that we would never be able to go in front of a judge and say, you know what, my reputation is on the line. Okay, I can't threaten and a judge will say, you know what, you can't threaten the jury, you can't threaten my family, but you can threaten me. You can threaten the prosecutor, that's fine. Just don't threaten, like, I don't understand. First of all, they're complaining about the gag order.
Right.
When judges have said, it's okay for you to put a target on my back so that I get death threats. And technically, you can have your boys threaten my daughter and put a target on her back and have her get death threats. And now we all walking around with security. It's okay for you to do that. Just don't threaten the jury.
Right.
For me, I don't have the words to explain the fact that they allowed him to do that.
Right.
I'm a regular person. Just do my 9 to 5 job. And if you come at me, I'm not going to say, oh, that's fine. You can come at me. Just don't say nothing to my daughter. It's
Right.
like, you coming at me. Okay, yeah, you can get it because you're not going to have an opportunity to make it to her. I'm supposed to lay this law down and this is how it's going to be. They embolden him when they say, you can do this, but you can't. Like, it's kind of like we're negotiating with him a little bit.
I
Why
gotta
are you
be,
negotiating him? Tell him what it is and let that be that.
I,
It drives me crazy. I'm
I,
sorry.
I gotta be honest with you. What we know of your daughter, anybody who fucks with your daughter's got to be crazy, because who knows what she's gonna do. She's not a shrinking violet.
No,
You might
good luck
you
with that.
you may get a foot up your ass, or anyway. Well, we're gonna see what happens with the immunity thing. We'll see if you're right, where they just don't make a decision. That will be disappointing, but it won't be negative, really. Most of this stuff will happen after the election, so I'm okay with that now that we got the 34 felony charges. Donald Trump is is sinking fast, and
Yeah.
after this debate, if they do it,
And
he's
he's
gonna be gone.
stressed because his comb over is not wrapping around like it used to.
No, his his hair is taking on different images. He looks rough. He looks like he's feeling it, and he's struggling at this point.
Did you say the man looked rough?
Rough, yeah, he looks rough. He
Okay.
he's not the once handsome and debonair man that Donald Trump was. He looks like he's gone through some shit, and I hope he
That's
goes
right.
through more.
He looked
Well,
rough.
yeah, he looks rough. Um, well, we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast for another day. I want to thank you for coming in, old soul. I'm glad you're in
Yeah.
high spirits, and let's
Yeah.
hope everything goes well with your current client, future clients, and that we
She
get
is
some
getting
accountability.
stronger by the day. She
That's
really
good.
is.
That's
She's
good.
gonna be all right.
Well, and I think you can take a lot of credit for it. You put in a lot of extra effort to help these folks. And I know a lot of people are admiring you for your efforts and appreciative of your efforts, these folks that get your help. So God bless you, man. You do far more than most people would. That says a lot.
I appreciate that, but I promise you, I do the bare minimum. Like these women, seriously, that's they journey. They journey. You know what I mean? Like I'm not the one having to get up every day and look myself in the mirror and drag my butt out of the bed
Yeah.
and deal with a hyperactive 3-year-old. He is on go
Well,
24/7.
not,
They,
not,
they do the work. They do the
not,
work. I'm just a safe space that allows them to
yeah,
do what they need to do. That's
not,
all.
not to contradict you here, but you do the bare minimum, like
Yeah.
fly to a different state for somebody you don't know and stay there on your dime for 2 weeks. Yeah, that's the bare minimum, old soul.
I did that once.
You do, you and your family do way more than most people will do, and God bless you for doing that. But um, you guys do a lot, and it's not the bare minimum. I don't care what anybody says. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of effort, and it shows compassion. And most of us could learn a lesson or two from you. If more people did that, things would be a lot better. But
It takes a village.
it takes a village, absolutely. All right, old soul, thank you very much for coming in. For those folks listening, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. Hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.